Hey, it's Warren Huart here. Hope you're doing marvelously well. I'm sitting with the great Christopher Thorn. How are you?
Good, good, good.
Now, two things. You have a beautiful studio. You've got an API, which we're probably going to spend most of our time talking about.
Great.
Because I love it.
Yeah, me too.
I used to live up here in this area, which is beautiful.
Yeah,
this is
I love it up here.
Probably sort of the arts area of Los Angeles.
It's become that. It's incredible. You know, the amount of producers and bands living in this neighborhood is just incredible. I mean, Dan Lanois lives down the street, and Rob's over there, and I think Butch Vig lives over there, and I mean, it's just endless up here.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
And you just told me about the room you built back there, which we'll go and check out in a minute, which I think is beautiful.
Yeah, this was a pool room when I bought the house. One family owned both of these houses, and this was the pool room for that guy has a pool. So when they split up the houses, I got the pool room. And this was just my yard, and so I built that into a tracking room from the ground up.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So you're basically doing what we do. You're making records from start to finish here.
I am. It's great. It feels good to be independent. And, you know, I built a space that, you know, I could make the records I wanted to make, as opposed to having to go to like some giant studio and nobody has budgets anymore. So
sure,
I could do everything here, and it's just, you know, it's great. I have a kid, and it's nice to be around the house. And
yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
the same way.
Yeah.
Just having the kids. It's a blessing and a curse.
You know, it's not quite a curse for me, but I love it. I like being at home. You know.
I love it when my wife is like, "Hey, can you just?" I'm in the middle of a vocal. Can you just come in and help with this thing? And
Right.
I'm doing a vocal. It'll only be a minute.
Yeah.
You know, as soon as you get in the house.
Well, they know when I say a minute, they know it means an hour. So that's the joke around my house is, you know, if I say 20 minutes, they're like, yeah, we'll see you in 3 hours, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, it's better than being the other side of the world, making a record and not seeing your family.
Yeah, it's true.
Because I get asked a lot. What is great about doing these is I get to. For me, I learn. Like when I talked to Larry Crane, he said to me he started Tape-Op. One of the reasons why is so he could talk to guys like you and find out how to make great records.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's kind of.
That's cool.
But the thing about it is like when you come from that place.
Yeah.
You realize that, you know, with Larry and Tape-Op, he's opening the world up for everybody because he's just like the rest of us. We all got into this because we love music.
Absolutely. I love Tape-Op, you know, and for me, I never got a chance to, you know, get coffee at a studio, and I never worked my way up that way.
Yeah.
So for me, it's really important to read Tape-Op and just to talk to people about making records, because I was never really taught how to make records.
Sure.
I was fortunate enough to buy gear because Blind Melon did well, and then I had to figure out how to use all the gear. You know, so for me, like having these conversations and just, you know, learn. Now it's a lot easier with the internet, and you know, like the series is a lot easier. But like Tape-Op for me was like a big deal. Reading everything and trying to figure out
it's huge.
how to use my gear.
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out because they just hit their 20th anniversary.
They're fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, Larry does a great job.
Yeah, he does.
So, you're also a writer.
Yeah.
I see a lot of writing credits, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So, do you find that your work is built around, you know, the sort of LA scene of a lot of co-writes with people on your producing tracks?
You know what? I don't love the co-write thing like that so much. I went through a phase where I was doing that, and everybody, you know, you get a different person every couple days and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know, that, I didn't love that as much, you know what I mean? I felt, I've always been a writer because I've been in a band, so it's always been sort of selfish writing. So for me, I found it hard to put myself in somebody else's shoes and write a song for them. It's easier when I'm in a band and I'm writing for myself.
Sure.
And I mean, as a producer, I'll come in and, you know, rewrite a bridge or something like that, but I don't love just the straight, you know, co-write this day, co-write that day, co-write this day. I'm not a giant fan of that, you know.
Yeah, I think I agree entirely. I think when you come from a band situation, you want that camaraderie.
Yeah. That's what I've always come from, you know, and I love a band who writes their own songs, and, you know, and I think working with a producer and you kind of help carve some stuff out, but when somebody comes to me and they don't have anything, they don't know who they are, that's just not what I love the most. Some people are great at that, and I'm envious of those people who can put themselves in a 15-year-old girl's shoes and they can write a song for that person. Like, I don't feel like I'm great at that. I feel like I'm great at working with a band and carving out those songs and making those songs the best they can be.
Great. And that's good to be upfront about it as well, because, you know, some people have an agenda to co-write on everything.
They do. And hey, if I could do it and was great at it, great. I just know what I'm good at, and I just don't love it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I don't love it. I'd rather, at a certain point when I started doing that, it started to feel more like a job.
Right.
And I'm like, fuck it, I'd rather just paint houses, or you know what I mean? Like, I love music too much for it to feel like a job.
So tell me a little bit about your journey. You said you come from Pennsylvania originally?
Originally from Pennsylvania, I moved out to Los Angeles in 1988.
Wow.
And then Blind Melon, I met Shannon and Brad, and Blind Melon started, and we got a deal pretty fast. And then from there, we moved to North Carolina as a band, and all lived in a house together. Awesome. We were all like fans of the band. Yeah. So we are like, let's move in a house, and we wrote a bunch of songs in North Carolina. We lived in Durham. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we made our first record with Rick Parasher in Seattle, and then I just stayed. I stayed in Seattle for about 7 years.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and then I moved back here because, as we were talking about, the rain was killing me.
Yeah, growing up in England and Seattle is pretty similar. It's a lot of rain.
Yeah, it was killing me. It was killing me. But I had a great time up there. I had a great studio. I built a studio in my basement, which is when I bought this. Actually, in the early 90s, I bought this. And I got a lot of work done. I was, making a lot of records, but I don't know. I missed LA.
Fantastic. Yeah, the weather's pretty exceptional, to say the least.
I mean, it's paradise. Look at this. It's paradise, It really is.
So tell me a little bit about your process. You've got the console. Yeah. Are you working in a completely hybrid fashion? So you're...
I am. I had a Studer A80 at one point, and then that all kind of disappeared. And so it's a hybrid situation. And depending on mixing, sometimes I keep the board at Unity and do all those sort of fader moves in Pro Tools. Right. Sometimes I'll break out a couple faders if I feel like I want to kind of feel it and play with the console a little bit. And then I just run stems at the end of my mix. I always run stems, but I run everything through all the goodies over there. Great. For the mix. And for a while I was in the box, and I just really dreaded it, and I'm just so happy to have this back. This was at another studio that I owned, and I just got this back about 1.5 years ago. Wonderful. So I love working in front of a console. To me, it's another instrument for me to use, and I don't love being in the box. I really don't. I tried to tell myself it was okay, and I tried to get down with that process, and I don't know. I felt like I had a desk job sitting there with a computer at a desk. I was like, I have a desk job. I don't want this. I want a piece of gear to play with. Sure. So it's been really fun having this back and being able to do all my mixes and record onto it. Yeah, I mean, having a classic API to play with is definitely... it's a good time. It's a good time. It's a good time. I mean, I still use 312s on my way in on guitars a lot. I love the way 312s sound. Of course, the graphics are unbelievable. I love the graphics. And then I also have a bunch of Neve stuff over there, too. So I got some choices. I got the 1064s and then 1081s, and then those CalRecs are just incredible too. Oh, PQ 1061s? Yeah, I love those. Yeah, I really love those a lot. So I have all the choices if I want something smushier, or I have other options besides the API. This guy named Bobby Croft was a guy when I was first starting to buy gear. He really helped me out quite a bit. He was a great guy, and I didn't know anything. Like I was saying, I was lucky enough to have some money because of the success of Blind Melon. I knew I wanted to be a record producer, and he just really sort of guided me into what I should be buying. And even though I didn't know Dan Lanois, I made 2 records at Kingsway. Huh. And at that time, that's when I sort of said, I want to make records for the rest of my life. I was still in the band at the time. Right. And even though I didn't know Dan, I was working at his studio, and all his assistants were there, and I was learning from them how to make records. Great. And I just thought, well, Dan makes the best sounding records. You know what I mean? I just was obsessed with everything Dan was doing. And at that time, at Kingsway, he had an API with graphics. Beautiful. So I just thought, well, I'll just go out and buy the same console he has. That'll be, at least I'll just start there. And then I'll learn how to use the shit. Who were you talking to yesterday who said that they were thrown? Oh, Simon Phillips. Said he got a call from Mike Oldfield. Okay. And said, hey, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm just doing this. He goes, so you record? He goes, yeah, I record. He goes, cool, come and produce my album. And Simon Phillips is like, okay. He said he turned up with an engineer, thinking, and Mike Oldfield had this digital console, digital Neve, whatever the first digital Neve was. Yeah. It was analog equipment, but it was digitally controlled. Sure. And he said he turned up at the studio the next day, and Mike Oldfield had fired the engineer. Oh. And
So he's like, cool, you record now. And he said, here's the manual, and left him for 3 hours.
Oh, God, miserable.
So I think that the sort of baptism of fire seems to be kind of a...
That's how I started my whole career.
Right.
One of the first girls that I produced was a girl named Amy Correa. And I saw her at Chenet, this great club in New York City.
Of course.
Walked in and...
Very famous for Jeff Buckley.
Well, that's the reason why I went there, is because I was really into that Jeff Buckley record.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to go to that place. He was discovered, And
Yep.
I went and I saw this girl, Amy Correa. Said, hey, my name's Christopher Thorn. I'm playing a band. If you ever want to make some demos, come to my house in Seattle. And I just bought, at that time I had the old 1604, the original API 1604. She comes, I literally get the console like the day before she arrives. I don't know anything about anything. I set up microphones, and like half the microphones are not working. And I'm like, what the fuck, what am I doing wrong? Trying to figure out all this stuff. I call my tech, and he goes, oh, well, what microphones do you have? I'm like, well, I have a KM84, SM81, blah, blah. He's like, you don't have phantom power. I'm like, okay, I don't know what that means. How can I get one? So, because the API didn't have phantom on it. So he had to come in wire like a box so that there was phantom on everything. So,
that's awesome.
So that was my first day of recording, Amy.
Great.
Yeah, that's how little I knew.
Right. That's fantastic.
Yeah, totally. So I learned all about phantom power that day.
Yeah.
And went on to make some great recordings with Amy, and I got her a record deal too. I think she was signed to Virgin Records.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so it was my very first, my first experience.
That's great.
Yeah, I loved it. I was really into it.
Yeah, I love the 560. So when you're coming back through mixing, you're coming back through pretty much channel by channel.
Yeah,
Right?
Absolutely. Some stuff gets subbed, like I break stuff out. And then, maybe I'll combine a couple things, but I like to at least break out, the kick snare and the rack and the floor and bass and acoustics and then, guitars and then
Great.
vocals. There's plenty of room, so just depending on the mix, I'll kind of, arrange it. I don't have to do too much subbing in here, but I'll do some, but not a lot,
Sure.
It just depends on the song, really.
Yeah, it's nice. The great thing about Pro Tools is nice. I presume you're using Pro Tools.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It is nice when we can just come out with a pair of stereo faders and then do a lot of volume rides.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great combination. I gotta tell you, man, I love the hybrid. I really do.
Yeah.
And I spent years making records on tape, and I learned, back to sort of when I was at Kingsway and learning from sort of all the Dan Lanois assistants. They taught me how to cut tape, and so I learned all that stuff. And but I don't really miss tape. I really don't.
Right.
I really don't. I miss the smell of tape. I really do, and I miss the time it takes to rewind, so you have a moment to talk. And like now, the pace is so fast.
Sure.
Nobody has any patience. So, but I love the hybrid. I love Pro Tools, and what you can do in it is incredible. And then being able to come through analog gear to me is just the perfect combination.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So you have 525s, the compressors at the end. Are you using them on the mix bus or just on?
No, I don't.
Instruments?
Just random stuff. I got to meet Val. I forgot his last name. He did like the Linda Ronstadt records.
Val Garay.
Yeah, and I had
Amazing.
I met him one night, and I was like, oh man, those are some of my favorite sounding records. And I was asking him what his vocal chain was, and he said that was his vocal chain right there.
Oh,
I was using that. Yeah, I was using that on the vocal. So I went through a little phase where I was using that in the vocal, but random stuff, gets sent over there. They're squirrely, sometimes I like things that are dummy proof. So sometimes I'm like, what, ceiling? Like sometimes I just have to kind of use my ear until it sounds good,
Yeah, I've personally found that I like them for like a drum crush because they can be all, add some spongy craziness, distortion in there,
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I don't know many people use them on a mix bus.
They're not my go-to anymore. I'll use them just for random things and like what you're saying, something to kind of just screw something up,
Yeah, Val's amazing. I mean, he just told me things that nobody else would do. Like for that, to say he does vocals, I've never heard anybody use it before.
Me either.
Yeah.
So, and I think those records are perfect. I mean, those records sound incredible.
Unbelievable.
I mean, my God, everything sounds incredible.
I got to work with Peter Asher a few years ago, and Val was, was the engineer for Peter.
Yeah, right. Wow.
And just, I could tell that that combination was pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So let's go over and check. Well, actually, a couple of things. I don't know much about the Quested. I have never personally used them. Can you tell me?
You know what? In the States, you don't see them around. I actually heard they were more popular in England.
I've been here 20 years now, so they probably got more popular when I left.
Yeah, I don't see them around so much in here, but they're fantastic. You know, when I was looking for something a little bigger than the NS-10s, everybody had the Genelecs, and I always think Genelecs, they sound great, but they're so scooped out in that mid-range, they're always confusing to me in the mid-range. So the guy that sold me these back to Bobby Croft is the one who kind of helped me buy a lot of this gear.
Sure.
He turned me onto those.
Great.
And once again, because I didn't have a ton of knowledge, he was like, well, Quincy Jones uses them. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I'll buy them. You know, that's how I was making decisions, you know.
Well, I still kind of live in that world, you know. I was talking to a business
too.
partner of mine this morning,
Sure.
and he's like, what do you think, this, and this? And I was like, you know what, that's your world, so whatever you think.
Yeah.
He's like, okay.
Yeah, and I'm happy with them. They're
Yeah.
great. I got to tell you, though, I spend more time with the NS-10s than really anything.
Right.
I turn those on when, you know, the A&R guy comes in and I want to blast him out or
Sure.
something. But I have the NS-10s, then I have a sub underneath for the NS-10s.
Which sub do you use?
Just the Yamaha, little, you know. Little,
those are great.
Yeah, a little something just to fill it in. And I don't have it blasting. I just want to fill something down there. And oddly enough, the KRKs are fantastic too. They're really pleasing to listen to. I really love those.
Ulrich Wilde, who also lives down the street, uses the KRKs and loves them.
They're great. I think they sound amazing. For me, value-wise, what are they, like $100 and something bucks, self-powered? I mean, to me, they're the best value out there. You
Yeah.
know, they're incredible.
Yeah,
They
I
sound
think
great.
that's important. I think there'll be a lot of guys that'll be like, well, you know, and they get maybe a little down on them, but for the price.
People get down on it, but I tell you, man, they sound amazing. And
Great.
I learned stuff in those that I don't hear in the NS-10s. There's something in like 200 range that I always reveals itself in those, more so than the NS-10s. So I just like having some different choices. But most of my day is spent in the NS-10s.
But I think you're hitting on a really important thing there. Having variation, whether it be...
That's it.
If you've got, like Joe Barisi's got, how many pairs of monitors does Joe have? A couple, like 6 pairs or something crazy.
Yeah.
But for definitely for the same reasons that you're doing.
Yeah.
Just quickly flick between stuff, spend your life where you're comfortable, but then... Oh, wait there, I didn't hear that. And then you go back to the NS-10s and, oh, yeah, there it is.
Then you hear it. For me, it's the amount of choices, and then I always do a car mix.
Great.
And, I mean, even just listening back to your iPhone, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you hear like, oh, Jesus Christ, my snare's so freaking loud. I had no idea, you know?
I've noticed a lot recently, when you and I were doing rock in the 90s, everything was really splashy.
Yeah.
Everything was...
Yeah.
You put that on your iPhone speaker now, it's almost unbearable.
Yeah, I know.
Some of those are records.
Oh, I
Everything's
know.
just...
Oh, it's awful. You can really hear it.
Yeah, you really hear it.
Yeah.
So now I noticed, we were talking with Bob Horn, and Bob's like, you know, he's been successful from 2000s onward.
Yeah.
And his top end is so controlled.
Oh, wow, how about that?
Because he's living in a world
Absolutely. Yep.
where you're mixing, like you're saying, you're listening on your iPhone.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I like to listen to it all.
yeah, it's really smart. And the car test is always the, you know, I don't do it as often as I used to because now I'm more used to my room.
Right, yeah.
But the car test, I think that's very, very revealing.
For the bottom end, to me, you just know right away. Oh my God, you know,
Yeah.
if your bass is too loud, boy, it just sounds like shite in the car, man. It's terrible. It's terrible, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
But I listen to a lot of records here. I got, you know, a bunch of vinyl, and I listen to a ton of records. So I get it pretty close. But that's sort of the final test for me, is going to the car.
Great. Perfect. I love that you have a vinyl player. Well, let's move over here and have a look at the gear over here.
So the Presonus for me is really just is so I can go between, if I want to listen to iTunes on the computer, that's the only reason why this is here.
Sure.
iTunes on the computer. If somebody has an iPhone, I have a little jack over there. They want to play me something, and then this is for the turntable. So that's the only thing that is for.
Great.
And then I got the Apogee Symphony. Amazing piece.
Is that 16 out or 18 out?
30. I have 32 coming out of that.
32.
Yeah.
Wow. See?
Yeah.
I'm a little out of touch with the Symphony. I mean, I've still got I've still got HD, not HDX. So I've been wondering about that. And I know people love the Apogees. Have you had this for a while?
They sound great. I love them. I had the Lynx for a little while.
I had the Lynx as well.
Yeah, which I think are fantastic also.
Yeah.
And I just recently got that. Not recently, maybe about a year ago.
Right.
I picked that up. I did a video for them. They launched this thing called the Ensemble, which is a great little sort of one rack space thing. I did a video with my band for them, and then they kind of, you know, hooked me up with a great deal in the Apogee. So
Great.
it's great.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I think Tim Pierce has moved over to these recently, which is fantastic. So I see you have a pair here of 1064s.
Yeah.
Oh, 64.
Yeah.
They've got slightly different EQ points, don't they?
They do.
Like that 1-2 I always find really sweet on a snare.
Oh man, I
a bit
love
of
them.
gong.
No man, they're fantastic. I mean, you know, we don't have to say anything about those. Everyone knows those are fantastic.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
They're racked by Vintage King.
Yep, I just got that in recently. This was at my other studio for years, and I just kind of got that back, so I'm excited to have that back.
Perfect. We just talked about these briefly. The Peak EQ 1061s are amazing.
They're amazing, and you know, these days everybody knows about all the gear and all the great deals. I still feel like that's one of the things that is still a great value.
Yeah.
Like, because everyone's trying to buy this.
Yeah.
And this to me is just as good as this, and it's cheaper. You know what I mean? I love these.
I feel like on bass guitars and electric guitars, I don't know if there's anything better because the EQ points are incredibly good.
Oh man, they're
sounding.
amazing. They're so sweet sounding.
And you can
those are great.
crank the EQ.
Those are great, man. Those are great.
I think Rob has a pair, doesn't he, as well?
Does he? I didn't know that, but
I think Barisi, he was a gear
it wouldn't surprise me. Those are just, they sound incredible. I've never worked. I'd love to see a whole console. I've only ever seen it, you know.
Well, KRK
broken
did a
out.
lot of stuff for the BBC. I have a friend who's a BBC engineer, who's actually now solo. But I believe these EQ points are shared also by Neve on some of their late 70s, early 80s ones, and I'm blanking on which ones they are. And when I asked him why, he said, well, the BBC told the manufacturer specifically what they wanted. So
EQ-wise?
EQ point
Wow,
wise,
that's
yeah.
cool.
And I think that, you know, because in those days they were a giant, you know.
Yeah,
It was like
sure.
every great engineer, not every, but many great engineers went through the BBC for training.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So wonderful stuff. You know, this was like engineers, guys actually.
I need that point.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's
Which
great.
is-
musical.
Yeah, really musical,
Yeah,
rather
yeah.
than, you know, a company deciding.
Of course.
This is what you need.
Yeah. A guy in a tie deciding what the EQ point should be. I don't know if it's true, but is it true? Maybe you would know that the Neve guys broke away and started making these. Is that what I feel like somebody told me.
You may be right.
Some of the guys that were working here went off to make those, and that's why they sound so similar. You know.
Yeah, you may well be right. I actually don't know that deeply.
Not sure if it's confirmed. These are 1081s. I've had these probably the longest. This was my very first mic pre. And I had a little, I traveled with a recording studio, which, you know, back then portable meant a road case this big,
Yeah,
you know.
I remember.
And, this was my very first mic pre. So I made a lot of the last bit of Blind Melon recordings were all done on this mic pre.
Fantastic.
I had a vintage 87 that I traveled with, this mic pre, and then the ADL, and that was my setup. And then I had a Mackie 16-channel board and ADATs.
ADATs.
2 ADATs, and that's what I traveled with when I was on tour with Blind Melon. That's how I traveled and put it in my hotel room every night, made recordings on the road, and so I got some of the last great Blind Melon recordings are all done on that system.
Well, you know, the ADATs, of course, are Jagged Little Pill.
I know.
Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy, and it sounds great.
And Aerosmith told me when they started an album with Glenn Ballard and finished it with somebody else, I'm blanking on who it was, but they started it on ADATs.
No kidding.
Yeah, that's what he used.
I mean, at the time, it was an incredible format. It was, you know, coming from an A80, which I had, and being that portable was, you know, I mean, now we're really portable.
Yeah.
But back then, it was incredible. I got to go out and make, you know, great recordings on the road because I had
video
this,
cassettes.
Yeah.
On
Isn't that wild?
VHS video cassettes.
I know.
Crazy.
I don't know archival-wise if they're holding up. I haven't tried to put an old tape in.
Nor have I.
Yeah, it scares me a little bit. All my DATs don't work. I know that.
Oh, the DATs don't work?
No, man. All my DATs. I have amazing DATs from the Blind Melon career, and every time I put them into a DAT player, you know, you hear that god-awful digital
Really?
sound. Oh, yeah, it's devastating. We would have been better off going to... I mean, I have cassette tapes that still work from 25 years ago, but those DATs, they don't hold up well.
Oh, it's horrible.
It was a terrible... Archival-wise, it was terrible.
Hundreds of DAT tapes of
Me
rough
too.
mixes.
Me too. In the 90s, I was doing most of my work in the 90s. So.
When we did all the pre-production for Californication, it was all done on DATs.
Oh, man.
So that's probably all dead. I shouldn't say that out loud.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know. I think they made CDs as well. Telefunken,
Yeah.
Beautiful there.
Yeah.
V72. Do you have that favorite? Use it on anything particular?
Always bass.
Great.
That's my go-to on bass. It's so, it just sounds like peanut butter.
Great.
It just is the smushiest, thickest, fattest. It's incredible, man. I love those.
Wonderful.
Yeah, those are great. Turntable.
Yeah.
Always gotta have a turntable. And then ADLs are great. I think at some point, now they're making the LA2As again, but I think there was a time when you could only get an old one. I feel like I don't know if at what point they started reissuing those.
Yeah, you might be right. I think regardless, I remember the sort of feeling. You know what it was like in the 80s when we were kids playing in bands? Anything 60s and 70s was out of date.
You know what? Not for me, because actually, for me, I was obsessed with that period of time.
Oh, so was I.
So I was still trying to buy all that gear.
But you'd go into studios, it was brand new SSLs.
Yeah, right.
Brand
That's
new.
true.
And
That's
for
true.
us, yeah,
I was still obsessed with all the old stuff.
Me too.
But I couldn't afford back then. The original LA2As were just, so expensive. So ADL started making these that are kind of similar, and they're fantastic.
He's a great guy. When I was making a record, he came down and loaned us his Fairchild.
Oh, wow.
He's definitely a great guy. I only have wonderful things to say about that guy.
Love that unit. Probably one of the older pieces of gear I've had. Like I said, I toured with this, and this was my very first sort of tour.
And I think he was, as you're pointing out, I think he was one of the first guys to really get it.
Yes.
To sit there and understand that, you could buy a brand new this, and this, but he was going back before anybody else, maybe a couple of exceptions, but one of the earliest guys, reissuing, making clones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And he nailed it. It's great.
Wonderful.
I love that thing.
I wonder how much these go for now.
I don't know, man. I've had that for 20 years.
That's great.
Yeah.
1178.
Yep.
That's in beautiful condition.
Yeah. Perfect. Love those. Use that on, everything. Sometimes I just run stuff through that just for the hell of it. But, drums, guitar, you name it. It's
wonderful.
Amazing. Yeah. And of course, we all know the all buttons in trick. So I usually wind up, when I go to mix, I do some parallel compression with the drums and usually wind up having, really smashing the hell out of my kick and snare and kind of mix it in.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Distressors.
Yep.
It's funny, I see them in every studio. I don't actually have a pair, and I should.
Yep.
I would say, you tell me, but I feel like if you only had to have one compressor, that might be the one these
That's
days.
exactly what I tell people. I have, like younger musicians say, I'm trying to put together a studio, what should I get? I always say, if you have money for one compressor, buy that one because it does what 4 compressors do.
Right.
And I was having a conversation recently with somebody about gear that were like game changers to us.
Sure.
And for me, that just changed everything when that thing came out. Everyone had one. Everyone had to buy one, and it just changed. It changed the game for all of us.
Fantastic.
Yeah, love those.
Yeah, I think also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I also feel like it was the fastest release compressor I ever heard when it first came out.
Oh, I didn't know that, but that makes sense. It's so adjustable and super fast. It's true.
And for the difference is like, with the LA2As and stuff, we love them, but one of their wonderful attributes is also
slow.
Yeah,
totally.
Which is great for great for percussion. I love it on tambourines because the tambourines sound so thick.
Oh yeah, for
sure. It just grabs every transient and just keeps it like this big blob of tambourine.
Yeah.
But for modern vocals in particular, I stay away from LA2As except for light compression.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But these are always phenomenal because they're
so fast.
Yeah, they won't hold the end of a phrase for too long.
Yeah.
They'll let it breathe and keep it big and fat. Yeah.
They're great. A must-have for sure.
Yeah, I think you're completely correct. I feel like one decent Class A mic pre, a 1073 or a 64 or an 81, and or even a 312, which are even more affordable. That and a Distressor,
You're set.
Yeah. I'm a huge 1176 fan.
Yeah,
1178.
I am too. I probably use that more than anything, I would say. Stuff goes through that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, wonderful. Transient designer, drums or?
Yeah, another thing, in my conversation I was having with somebody about game changers, when I got turned on to that was one of those things too that just kind of changed everything. When you have a small room and you want it to sound 5 times bigger, it was just a miracle when that thing came out and you could expand it and you're like, oh my God, I don't love gear that's subtle. I love gear that I can hear. If I'm going to spend money on something, I want to hear the damn thing. That thing's fantastic. So yes, drums, always drums. And then when I mix, you know, I'll run my kick and snare through it depending on how much length I want on my kick or my snare. They're just perfect for that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I agree. I have the 4-channel one. We go kick, snare, toms.
Yes, I had the 4 at one point in my other studio, and I actually want to get a 4 one because I love them on the toms as well. Kick, snare, and toms, perfect. Yeah.
But the great thing about toms and Pro Tools is you can.
Yeah, I can get in there. And,
kick and snare's happening every nanosecond.
Yeah.
But toms is sometimes. You know, I've done tracks, so it's boom, boom, and that was it. The whole song.
Yeah, totally.
So you're right. I mean, a 2 can probably do 99% of your life.
No doubt.
And is this your bus compressor here? The
Always.
the Smart.
Yep.
Great.
And I love that combination of the API and then you know, putting that at the end. I don't know. It just makes it sound like it really does have a thing that everybody. I feel like lots of people at record companies expect a certain sound, and that thing has that sound. You know?
Great.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, I can't live with that. It's weird that the funny thing is, to be honest, as I could never, coming as a Neve guy, especially growing up in England and loving the same thing as you, looking back 20 years all the time.
Yeah.
I could never figure out SSL compressors until I was forced to. I was in a situation where I was mixing that Aerosmith record and I'm on an SSL and I'm like, I don't know what to do. It's like, I think flying by the seat of your pants, you're saying with your beginning your career.
Yeah.
I think it's an important message to give to people, is that people ask me sometimes, could I do this, this, and this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Try it.
I mean, for me, what it forces you to do, you know, for me, not knowing technically how to use the gear at the beginning of my career was great because I had to use my ear. The only thing I had was my ear. So I don't know, you know, when I first started, I didn't know what any of the shit meant, but I just, you know, oh, that sounds good. That sounds like my favorite Beatles record. That sounds like my favorite Zeppelin record. So that's how I made all my records, you know, so.
Which is Jeff Emmerich at 19 or 20 years old, wherever he was in Revolver, they're like, well, you know, I think it was Norman Smith. People can correct me. I think it was Norman Smith who was they were in a union dispute with EMI, and they're like, you know what? The regular engineer can't make the record. Looks like you're doing it.
Wow. That's great.
So he's like
thrown into it,
and then, you know, inventing ideas that we now take for granted.
I know. It's incredible. Your ears, that's really the best tool, and if you can rely on that, it doesn't matter if you don't know what threshold means, or, you know, you just
trust your ears.
Yeah, trust your ears. You know.
Absolutely. PCM90.
Yeah, I don't use a ton of reverb. I've never been that heavy on reverb, but it's one of those things I've had forever. But, you know, it's good to have something. You know, if I had room, I'd love to have a plate, but, you know, who's got room for that?
Put it up on the ceiling, maybe.
I guess, yeah.
Talk to the wife. Maybe you can build a shed just for the plate.
Totally.
She'll be like, what?
Yeah.
There's a plate in there?
Yeah.
Well, it's not really a plate. It's a big piece of metal in a box.
Plate. Yeah.
That would be a great conversation.
Yeah.
And then the Carver, are you using that to power anything in particular?
That's just the NS-10s.
NS-10s, great. Okay. So do you use this as part of your vocal trick?
Yeah, always.
Okay.
Yeah. You know what's amazing about that is, you know, I feel like we all know all the tricks, right?
I don't know if everybody knows this vocal trick.
That's my point, is that
this is the date
it's the one thing that I meet so many producers where I'm like, oh, I got the Dolby A, blah, blah, for the vocal chain. They're like, what's that? Like, and it's the one thing. It's
David Kahn's vocal trick.
Oh, dude, I use it on everything. Like, once you get used to it, now when I don't have it.
I don't have it, but Mark Needham has one, you have one, Dave Kahn has one.
Oh, man.
It's the Regina Spektor vocal sound when everything is like this.
Oh, dude, the air on top of that, it's just magical. You can't describe it, but it's incredible.
So tell us how it works. How does the Dolby A trick
work?
you
know, I should know this. I just know, and I'll probably get it wrong.
No, it's fine.
I just know it has something to do with it.
How do you don't worry about it.
I use it on my vocal chain at all times. And what I do is, in Pro Tools, I have my vocal coming back to 17 and 18 at all times.
Yeah.
So, but I have it patched in, the Dolby A is patched into 17 at all times.
Great.
So if I want a, you know, super Dolby A sound, this is maxed out and I pull down my 18. If I just want it to be a little more subtle, I can just kind of arrange these
faders depending on how much of that sound that I want. So I find that works the best as opposed to just having it strapped onto my one phone.
I see.
So that's how I do it, and there's some mod around the back, which I haven't screwed with. This guy named Tom Herzog did this mod around the back. But, man, it's just one of the most magical things. I've never found a plugin that did what that does. And I know there's probably some plugins that are trying. I personally have not found one that does what that does.
So when we went to talk to Valgaray, he told us about SM53s. And he said that is his go-to electric guitar mic on every album he's ever made.
Oh, wow.
Not a 57. The week that it came out, there wasn't a single SM53 left on eBay.
Oh, shit.
And the price has like doubled.
Yeah.
So I don't have one of these yet. And I can't.
Dude, those are a few $100 on eBay.
I'm going to buy one before this video comes out.
No, those. And once again, that goes back to my experience working at Kingsway and all the people who worked for Dan Lanois that were working at the studio.
Sure.
I heard Dan's record for The Beauty of Winona, I guess was that solo record that he did. And for me, it was just the greatest vocal sound I had ever heard. I was obsessed by it. And they were like, that's the trick right there. So I went out and I bought that and I had it modded, and it's an incredible trick. Everyone should know about it. I mean, it really is. It's one of the last things that not everybody knows about.
But it does now.
They do now.
Thank you very much. That's great. So the Roland Chorus Echo.
Yeah, great. Real tape delay,
Those are amazing.
Yeah, rad and, inconsistent, and, when it works great. And once I find a sound that I love, I usually wind up printing it. Because sometimes you can go have lunch and you come back and then, the tape sounds different. But that's the beauty of it, though, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the fact, I have a shitty piano. And I always say to people, what I love about my shitty piano is it's my shitty piano.
Yes, exactly.
Not the perfect plug-in.
Yeah.
So like the plug-in of this, if there is such a thing, would be great. However, and it would be great that it sounds the same every time. However, everybody has that sound.
Exactly.
But only you have this. Only I have my shitty piano.
Well, that's why I love analog gear more than plugins, is because now we all have access to the same plugins, and I feel like a lot of the recordings become homogenized because we're all using the same shit. But some of this older gear, because it does change as time goes on, it all has its own character.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be completely different from the plug-in version. So that thing's great. When I find it, lots of times I'll do a vocal and I'll do a delay time over here, and then I'll change it a little bit and have another delay time over here for my vocal sound.
Nice.
And then I print them so I have them and they never go away. And it's great. I love it.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
I love that stuff. So look, I'm a guitar player, so you have a beautiful collection here. Can you give us some? Look, I'm sorry. Do you mind if I just grab
No,
this?
go for that one. That's my main baby. For me, touring, to me, the Tele Custom is just the best guitar ever made. I mean, the fact that you get a humbucker and the single coil in one guitar, it's like you get the Les Paul sound for solos, and then you get the single coil for rhythm stuff. It's just the perfect guitar. I have 3 of them. So when I tour, I usually, because I'll do stuff in different tunings, so I usually wind up taking three of the Teles out, and they're all the same. They're all the same, but they're all completely different. You know what I mean? They're all Tele Customs, but feel much heavier this one feels. Different neck, more of a bat, right?
Yeah, I love it.
Way thicker, fatter. And then this is a smaller, this is in between weight-wise. That one's the lightest one.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And so this is a smaller neck, but all the same pickup. For me, the pickup configuration on these is they just got it right,
I just remember watching The Edge on some live thing, I don't know when it was, 80 something or other, and he had this. I'd never seen it.
Yeah. And I was a Keith Richards fan, so,
Keith Richards as well, yeah.
For me, that was the reason to pick up those guitars. And then I tried live. I've tried to play other guitars. I went through a little phase where I was playing an SG for a little bit, but for me, I always come back to the Tele Customs just because of that. The pickup configuration to me is just absolutely perfect.
Gorgeous.
And they're just, you could throw them down a flight of stairs and you pick them up and they're in tune, So,
Jerry Jones?
Yeah, he stopped making guitars,
Why is that?
He retired. And what's so cool is he could have sold that company to somebody, but he didn't sell the company, and they're just he's done. They're not making them anymore, and Yeah, they're great.
Because they're like, for those that don't know, they're like the souped up. If a Dan Electro was actually not a cheap guitar, because it was always just a cheap guitar.
Yeah, exactly.
But if it was a really incredibly well-made piece of work of art.
Yeah, these you could actually intonate, and then I have this Jerry Jones too.
Oh, you've got this as a
Yeah.
you got this as a Nashville tuning.
Oh, do I? Oh, yeah. I forgot
Yeah,
about
no, that's great. I love Nashville. I have the same guitar.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Jerry
I have the
Jones.
same one.
Yeah. Yeah, he's great, and they weren't. They're not expensive guitars.
I don't get to use it on many recordings. Do you find anything that works for?
No.
Can I give you a high five?
But it's rad to have her. It's rad to have
I've
around.
tried it so many times.
Yeah, I know. Every once in a while, like one every 10 records, you're like,
Like,
oh.
try the sitar guitar.
Yeah, I
and you
know.
plug it in, and you're like, it doesn't work. It doesn't mean anything.
it's cool to have around, and every guitar player's like, this is great, But I do know that, like in the '60s, a lot of those old soul records, like the hook would be played on some.
I'm going to have to go back and find a place for it.
Yeah.
I'll call you when I find something.
Please do. I don't. Yeah, it doesn't get used that much.
And then a little Martin looks
Yeah,
absolutely beautiful.
1954. I found out that these guitars were $25. These were the student models when they came out. But after it ages, it turns into the greatest guitar ever.
Oh yeah, and the secret of a lot of that Chili Peppers stuff was the fact that they would always use small body.
I mean, for me, I use a small body because it fits my body type. You know what I mean? When I play like a regular full-size guitar, I feel like I'm playing my dad's guitar, wearing your dad's suit, So that just fits my body better, and I just love the mid-range for me.
They record so much better.
Oh, it records so much better. You can always find room for that, because of the
gorgeous.
because of the sort of the mid-range on it,
So much fun. The Strat here, what's that?
Yeah, that's a in the '90s. I guess they reissued. What is that? A '62? I think '62 reissued.
Beautiful.
I played one show in Minneapolis, and every guitar I owned, we were late for sound check, and instead of like putting the guitars in, waiting for them to warm up, then you open the case, we were late, so we pulled everything out of the van at that time, pulled everything out of the van and got on stage, and every guitar I owned checked. See the checking on that?
Oh wow.
That wasn't like that. Isn't that wild?
That's wild. But
Every guitar I owned checked that day. Like this one.
and for that, it's probably actually kind of nice.
I love it. It looks great. Look at the checking on this one though. This is like giant checking. Look at this.
Oh wow.
See the giant checks on this?
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, isn't that wild? All from that one show in Minneapolis. It was like, minus 200 degrees or something.
I made a record. I made a record in the winter in Pachyderm when it was still going. You remember Pachyderm where they did in Utero there and everything.
Okay. Oh wow.
And it was like this big house with a studio attached, in the middle of nowhere. You know. Great idea for send bands away there. And I've never felt so much cold in my life.
So cold, right? Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah.
So that makes sense.
Yeah, it's nice.
Is that 330?
This is 67.
Oh, that's
It's in pretty good shape. This one, I don't think this was on the road with me, so there's no checking. That's a 67. Nice tiny little neck on that. I love that guitar. Yeah, it's great.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a nice one. Back to the Tellies, mid-70s SG.
Great.
And I play a little bit of lap steel, so I have a couple of those around.
Oh, look at this Bassmaster here.
Yeah, those are great. I went into a store. I don't know if the guy was correct, but I went into the store and I said, I'm looking for the solo sound in Tangerine, the Zeppelin song,
Sure.
when he breaks into it.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, try that, So it's kind of a similar sort of vibe. Yeah, it's really cool.
Beautiful.
Yeah, those are great. Cool little fuzzy, octavey, kind of fuzziness.
That's fantastic.
Yep, love
There's
that.
some lap steel.
Yep, a couple lap steels.
I had a
Love those.
Gretsch. I gave it to a friend of mine as a gift
Oh,
for
Nice gift.
for wonderful work that he did.
yeah.
But they're beautiful. I
Those
don't,
are great.
I play lap steel like a guitar player. I don't really.
Me too.
Yeah,
me too.
but-
I just wing it. Yeah.
I think you probably play it better than I do.
I don't know about that. If you put enough delay and some reverb on it, you sound special.
sound good.
Yeah, it sounds great.
So let's check out this beautiful live room. So it's Robert Maughan's company, which is Maune, isn't it?
Yes.
And they did some stuff for me in my original studio 17 years ago, 16 years ago.
Wow.
And then they did Dave Cobb's studio when
Yep.
he was in LA.
Yep.
And now they've done this in your studio. I think this is possibly the best work I've seen them do. It's
And
really
they did Vintage
beautiful.
King as well.
Oh, they did Vintage King as well.
Yeah.
of course.
I think they did mine right after Cobb's, because I went and saw Cobb's, met with the guys,
Yeah.
and they came over and started working. And he worked with a guy named Stewart, forgot his last name, an incredible woodworker, a great guy as
Yeah,
well.
this is the best work I've seen them do.
Yeah, I mean, they did incredible detail work. There's Helmholtz resonators up in here. And so there's, no standing waves, Helmholtz resonators in here. There's no standing waves. With a room this size, I had to be really, really, really conscious of not having some nasty
You don't want standing waves, but at the same time you want it to be bright so you can get big drum sound in a small room.
Exactly, and I can with the wood. And you roll up the carpet, use the transient designer, and suddenly my room sounds like it's 3,000 square feet.
Fantastic.
So yeah, it's great. They did a great job. I couldn't be happier. There's all this crazy detail above here. There's this whole thing, you can't see it, where all these like different squares are all different sizes, and that goes up another 3 feet this way. And
The other thing about their work is they're really pretty affordable. Yeah. Yeah. Not too expensive, not too cheap. By LA standards.
Yeah. I could have done this a lot cheaper if I would have made a dead room without the wood.
Oh, I see.
But the wood all came from, just from the supplies alone were just expensive. The wood, the wood's expensive. It came in from Washington State. I had it shipped in from Washington State.
So your own
Yes, my own kicking
stomping
grounds. Yeah, my own
grounds.
stomping grounds. But they're mostly number ones. There's very little, knots and stuff. So, but it came out great. I used, I'm trying to think the finish I used on it. It's what they would have used in the 70s. It's an older. I can't think of the name.
Well, as a guitar player,
maybe, yeah.
You have a great collection of amps here.
I like weird, funky stuff, back to like stuff that has its own character and ages in a different way. And I just find recording-wise, smaller amps sound the best, I just like the focus of sort of a smaller amp. I can get the biggest guitar sounds from the smaller amps, actually.
Yeah, that was the Dave Jordan trick.
Yeah.
All the Alice in Chains stuff was the small amps.
How about that?
Front and back miking, so he'd back mic it for the low end, flip it out of phase.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And that's how you get that
I didn't know that about the Alice in Chains stuff. Wow.
And then he also used a Super Beetle, which is a solid state head.
Oh, I don't know that yet.
Because I think it was the Vox.
Okay.
You saw when the Beatles played in the US,
Yeah.
they played those huge monolithic amps.
Yeah.
And the thing is, they're transistors, so they have a very solid tone. They're not flattering, but all the tonality is coming from the small amp, all the classic kind of edge. But then the Super Beetle just kind of provided this wall of blandness, I suppose.
Interesting.
Probably the wrong way of describing it, but but yeah, all the personality came from these amps.
Yeah, I love them. They're all drastically different, and as a producer, they're just great tools. Trying to find
Vibrachamp is beautiful.
Yeah.
The Skylark here, I don't see very often. That's gorgeous.
Those are great, man. You put that on 10, and it has a super strong vibrato, which is amazing.
I think Gibson amps are very unknown and underrated. People don't realize how good they were.
They really are, and they really are different from Fenders and everything else out there. And I really love them. They sound great. Another little Supro.
Beautiful.
Also has a great reverb and tremolo on that as well.
And I love it, volume and tone. God
You know
bless
what?
it.
For me, dummy proof is just everything. If I see a guitar amp with a bunch of knobs, I'm just like, I just break down. I'm just like, that's too many choices. Make it simple. And that's what's important to me. This actually came when I bought that lap steel we were looking at in there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was the sort of combo came with that lap steel I bought. And that is an incredible amp. I mean, that's probably been used on more of my records than...
And it just has a volume.
Yeah, exactly.
Now,
Perfect.
Tyler amps, what's this?
This is a guy, I was in a store in New York City, and I was looking at Vibroluxes, and they were all so expensive, like all the original ones. Mm-hmm. And this is a guy that makes these, hand builds these, and they sound incredible. It's just real mushy, kind of Neil Young-y sort of sound. It's great. I don't see them in stores anywhere. I just happen to see them in New York, and the guy sent me one, actually. And he hasn't asked for it back, so hopefully he won't now that I'm telling everybody about it.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Great amp, though. Great amp.
Wonderful.
Princeton, same thing, mushy, kind of Neil Young sort of sound,
those.
Yeah. Great,
and I love that period. I don't know the year, but that particular period I think is often quoted as being one of the best.
Yeah, love it. And then there's a funky little Gibson, another weird Gibson amp that has the most incredible mid-range honk to it.
Fantastic.
And it's really great. Nothing else kind of sounds like that amp. It's super unique.
And now for drums.
Back to amps, and then I have.
We're still
going. So we got the Thunderbolt. We got the Thunderbolt
Yeah.
here, which are fantastic, and Supro. Just some guys bought the company and started making these.
That's what I was hearing.
And this is the reissue, and I have to say, it's amazing.
It is?
I mean, as you can see, most of my stuff is like the old stuff in here, right?
Yeah.
This is the one thing that's new that I just feel like they really got it right. They did
Fantastic.
an amazing job. These sound incredible. This has become my touring amp now. I used to tour with the Thunderbolt, but I just started getting nervous touring with, this old, This holds up. It's fantastic. The bottom end is a little tighter than this, I would say. Really great. This is the Coronado.
Coronado.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
They're doing good work.
You got the Fender Bandmaster
Yep,
there?
that's a 67 Bandmaster. That was my first amp that I bought, and I used that on all the, old Blind Melon records. That was my main touring rig, too.
What are you tracking bass with? Do you have a...
These days, I go DI.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I go DI and I Sans Amp it at the end, and
I love a Sans Amp. It's like the best free plugin that comes with Pro Tools.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is.
It gets used a lot for me.
I don't miss the, the bass amp so much. If I do want something snarly and I am specifically going for something like that, I'll just send the bass through that. Many times I'll send the bass.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, I'll send it through that, but that was my main guitar rig for forever.
And then the Marshall?
Marshall, God, I've had that since the 80s. I would say that rarely gets used for my own projects. I just find myself going to other weirder amps as opposed to the Marshall. Great, it's just great, everyone knows what that is.
Fantastic.
It's just not my go-to. I prefer like the weirder, older amps that sound like they're blowing up. More so than the Marshall,
Oh, is that a Sony there?
Yeah, C37A.
Yeah.
Back to the Dan Lanois, it's like, he told everyone this was his favorite mic, and they used to be $500, and then he said it in an interview, and then now they're a few $1,000s. But from working at Kingsway, once again, like with all the assistants there, they were like, you need to get a C37A. That's the mic.
C37A.
Oh, man. And over top of the drums right there, I can't live without it. It's just,
wonderful.
It's incredible, yeah.
And then we were talking earlier when we were off camera about D12 on the kick.
Yep, love that.
And then you're going 57 top and bottom?
I do.
Yep.
I do. I've tried other things, but I don't know. 57 just always works, doesn't it? It just sounds...
I can tell you're in Seattle because look, you've got a Patrick Keeler there.
Well, Patrick, I was working with Greg Dooley, Afghan Wigs, working on the new Afghan Wigs record just a couple months ago, and Patrick plays with Greg now in the Wigs. Yeah, so he's been touring with Greg, and they were here, a few weeks ago, and he just left his snare here for me.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, great. Leave it here, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great drummer. Amazing drummer.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Christopher, thank you ever so much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming by.
Beautiful space. What I love about this, I'm thinking of yours, Brad Woods as well. You know Brad.
Oh, of course. Big fan.
It's just, I love this new world that we're living in. You can have these beautiful studios that you build behind the house. It's all about function.
Yes. Absolutely.
The idea of having a sort of 2,000 square foot room now for drums is beautiful, but they don't so much.
Yeah, like we were talking about earlier. Like I don't find those to be as useful. People just don't have the budget anymore.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like this is the new model of making records, and I don't have to make decisions based on on trying to pay the mortgage because I have a place that's 3,000 square feet.
Sure.
So I feel like I'm making smarter records because I'm in a space this big that's affordable.
Well, it's fantastic. Thanks for showing us around.
Yeah, thanks for coming by.
Beautiful guitar collection. I would hire a studio probably not just because of the API, but also just because I could pick up one of these gorgeous guitars.
Anytime.
And we have very similar taste. Telecasters, a 330. My oldest mentor, Ollie Alcock in England, played a 330.
Yeah, great guitar.
Oh, they sound so good.
Great guitar. Feeds back nicely too. If you go over to the amp, it'll whistle. It's great. It's like such a good whistler.
With the guitar amps, beautiful.
Yeah, thanks.
So thanks for watching. As ever, please subscribe. Go to producelikeapro.com. Go down below because you're going to see a link to Christopher's studio, which is called
Fireside Sound. There's a real fireplace over there.
Fireside Sound. So check out the studio online as well. And of course, we'll put a link to Christopher's All Music credits. There's some beautiful albums that he's made in there. Thank you ever so much for watching and have a marvelous time recording and mixing.